Alright, we'll be looking at the creation today of the Byzantine Empire, a new Rome. So the Byzantine Empire was the eastern half of the old Roman Empire. Their capital city was Byzantium. It was called Constantinople under the rule of Constantine before the split of the empire. Eventually it would be renamed that after when Justinian became ruler. The Eastern Empire would continue for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Empire in 453 AD. In 395, the Romans divided the empire in half. The communication between the two empires, between the East and the West, was difficult. The Western Empire would become beset by corruption and attacks from barbarians, and their Eastern rulers viewed themselves as rulers of all of Rome. So here's an example. Here's where the empire split in 395 AD. In 527, though, we get a new emperor, one of the greatest emperors. And Justinian becomes emperor, and his goal is to regain the glory of Rome. In 533, he sends his general Belisarius to reconquer North Africa, which he succeeds. In 535, Belisarius captures Rome from the Ostrogoths. Rome changes hands 6 times over a period of 16 years. Justinian is able to reclaim Italy and calls himself Caesar. So, here's the Byzantine Empire, and then what was added by Belisarius for Justinian. This is the Byzantine Empire at its greatest extent. The Byzantines ruled with absolute power, had the state and the church. Okay, now the church was different in the Eastern Empire versus the Western, what would eventually become the Western Empire. The Roman Catholic Church was in the West, the Eastern Orthodox was in the East. They appointed bishops at will and are ruthless in politics. They were constantly under the threat of assassination. They had 88 emperors, 29 were murdered, and 13 stepped down. Life in New Rome. Byzantine Empire was Roman, but it has its very own identity. They created a complex society with a uniform law system called Justinian's Code. This code decides the legal questions and it regulated life, things like marriage, property. And this code served the empire for 900 years. Alright, so Justinian's Code consisted of 4 works. The Code, which is 5,000 old useful Roman laws. The Digest, which includes 50 volumes of summaries and quotes from great Roman legal minds. The Institutes, which is the law textbooks for students, and the Novella, or New Laws, which is legislation passed after 534. Okay? Empress Theodora. Justinian's wife Theodora had a lot of power and influence in the Byzantine Empire. She met with and wrote to foreign leaders. She helped advise Justinian and help him pass laws, and she encouraged building of Christian cathedrals. The imperial capital, Justinian is going to set out to create a beautiful capital for the empire. He rebuilds Constantinople's fortifications, including a 14-mile stone wall. He built churches, schools, aqueducts, and hospitals. But his crowning achievement was the Hagia Sophia, or the Hagia Sophia. This is the Hagia Sophia, as you can see here. Today it's a Muslim mosque, but it was originally a Christian cathedral. Here is the city of Constantinople. One of the things that's neat about Constantinople during this time, I mean, it was a city a lot like Rome. It had its own, the Hippodrome, which is where the chariot races were. It had an amphitheater. It had all kinds of other things similar to, it had aqueducts, okay? So here's the wall of Constantine, and then here's the wall of Theodosius II as they expanded, and so forth. Although they were Roman, many Byzantines actually spoke Greek. They valued education, and they focused on classical learning. Greek and Latin grammar were taught, philosophy of the greatest like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. They also studied Greek and Roman classics, literature from people like Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey. They had studied history from Herodotus, the father of history. They studied geometry from Euclid, the father of geometry. And they studied medicine from Galen. All right, one thing that happened was in Constantinople was the Nika Rebellion. In Main Street, they have what's called the Mess or the Middle Way, which was a trade center for products from around the world. They also had a hippodrome where chariot races and other acts, which were free to Byzantine citizens, with a capacity of 60,000 people. And one event happened where they would call it the Nika Rebellion, where fans call for Justinian's head, and Belisarius kills 30,000 rebels. One of the things that's interesting is in the book, there's a quote by Queen Theodora where she urges Justinian to stay behind and watch, basically. So here's what the Hippodrome looked like. As you can see, it looks very Roman. But the empire faced setbacks after Justinian died. You had riots, foreign attacks, etc. We have the Plague of Justinian, a bubonic plague that appeared from rats that killed thousands a day at its height. That you will have attacks from all over the empire. We have the west, the Lombards, the north, Slavs, Avars, Bulgars, and Russians, and the east, Persians and Muslims. Constantinople attacked several times, and Turks slowly take their territory away from them, leading to the Battle of Manzikert. Okay, so here's an example of the shrinking of the empire. So 600 AD, it gets smaller, smaller, and smaller. Alright, the Byzantines used everything to maintain their empire. Diplomacy, marriages, military power. But one of the things they do is a new general, Heraclius, organizes the province into military districts. This delays the enemies, and foreign attacks slowly shrink the empire over time. By 1350, the empire reduced to the tip of Anatolia and the strip of the Balkans. The walls are what keep the invaders out, and the Constantinople are known for the walls. But finally, the walls were eventually breached in 1453. Now, what made these walls unique is that here's what you have: you got a moat, the Peritekian, an outer wall, and then an inner wall that was even bigger. So, you can see why these walls would be very difficult to breach. And Constantinople fell in 1453 by the Ottoman Turks. Now, Christianity developed differently between the East and the West. The reason for this was because of distance and contact. As the Eastern Empire grew, the distance became greater. Early Christianity focused on works of early figures such as Saint Basil. Patriarchs were subservient to the emperor. In 730, Leo III bans the use of icons. He's the Pope, which leads to riots in the streets of Constantinople. In the West, the Pope supports the use of icons and orders the excommunication of Leo III. Princess Theodora. Now, this is not the same Theodora that we talked about earlier. It's a different one. She restores icons in 843. And finally, in 1054, the Pope and the Patriarch. Now, the Patriarch is the leader of the Greek Orthodox. Alright, the Pope and the Patriarch end up excommunicating each other, causing the church to split, with the West being Roman Catholic Church and the East the Orthodox Church. Both churches fight for converts. They have Byzantine missionaries that are going to push to convert Slavs, which live north of the Black Sea. We have Cyril and Methodius invent the Cyrillic alphabet, which allows the Slavs to read the Bible in their own language. okay, which is going to help lead to the conversion of the Russians, which we'll talk about another day.